In the post-Cold War era, Japan's strategic environment has changed dramatically. The rise of China as a great power that harbors far-reaching geopolitical and geoeconomic ambitions, the emergence of India as a regional heavyweight, the increasingly complex strategic competition between Beijing and Washington, the efforts undertaken by the Middle Kingdom to upgrade its naval capabilities, the confrontation between Russia and the West over Ukraine and North Korea, intermittent acts of nuclear saber-rattling are all game changer that entails tectonic impacts for Tokyo. Likewise, the prospect of conflict over Taiwan, a potential Korean reunification, and eventual geopolitical alignments in Asia-Pacific region, an area that is becoming a global center of gravity in terms of both high politics and economic dynamism, would be problematic too. So far, it seems that Japan is firmly anchored to the orbit of the United States, particularly in the domain of security. Japan is classified by the Americans as a major non-NATO ally, and the East Asian country hosts a significant American military presence, including air base, naval facilities, and arsenals. Tokyo has privileged access to the purchase of sophisticated American-made weapons, including fighter jets such as F-35S. There are collaborative ties between Japan and the Five Eyes, a comprehensive intelligence sharing alliance headed by the US that also included the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Notably, Japan has also joined the so-called Quad, an alliance which also includes the US, Australia, and India that intends to operate as an Asian equivalent of NATO, whose purpose is to contain the influence of China, an understandable move if one considers that Tokyo does not have what it takes to face the challenge of an increasingly powerful and assertive Middle Kingdom on its own. We know that Japan belongs to the G7, a group controlled by Antarctic powers, and Japanese elites have been cooperated through their participations in secretive networks of power brokers, strategic thinkers, and business moguls such as Trilateral Commission. On the other hand, Japan is similarly preparing to challenge the Belt and Road Initiative, a Chinese project launched to create an axis of geoeconomic interconnectedness that would cover much of the Eurasian landmass through transnational infrastructure networks. Tokyo apparently seeks to take care of that through the development of alternative multilateral frameworks and interfaces which would involve logistical corridors, energy, digital telecom platforms, trade, rules, and the flow of investments, with Washington and the Brussels as a conduit to bypass and counterbalance and the schemes designed by Beijing. Nevertheless, there are subtle signs which suggest that Japan's pro-Western strategic orientation must not be perpetually taken for granted. Siding with the US military against China in a direct clash would bring dangerous risk for Tokyo, and its political and material preparedness to deal with such outcome is unclear. Relying on the protection of the American nuclear umbrella for defensive purposes is one thing, but joining a campaign of expeditionary warfare is an entirely different matter. Alternatively, the decline of US hegemony or reluctance to engage due to the influential isolationist political sentiments in DC would naturally force Japan to resist its position in order to strengthen its independence and seek a favorable balance of power. Another paradox is that even so Japan proactively joined the Western campaign of economic warfare against Russia through the imposition of sanctions, the East Asian nation is still an importer of Russian fossil fuels, including oil, natural gas, and coal. Tellingly, the Japanese private firm JERA, the country's largest electricity generator, has recently renewed contracts for the long-term delivery of Russian energy from the LNG plant located in Sakhalin-2 despite the atmosphere of mutual hostility between the Kremlin and the West and the fallout derived of the Ukraine war. How this ambivalence towards Moscow will be handled in a foreseeable future is unknown. Some intriguing predictions that augur a Japanese strategic realignment have been formulated by geopolitical thinkers. An important factor that needs to be kept in mind is that Japan's national power has been underutilized. That might change if the Japanese state decides that it is time to assume a more assertive and independent role. After all, Japan has the world's third largest GDP, its military-industrial complex manufacturer state-of-the-art weaponry, it has a blue water navy with regional power projecting capabilities, and thanks to a pool of formidable scientific cadres, is well positioned to harness the strategic, military and commercial benefits of the fourth industrial revolution. Likewise, Japan has the technical expertise that would be needed to develop its own nuclear weapons program. In an uncertain world in which weaponization of complex interdepends financial volatility and the incidence of system economic disruptions have become commonplace, the autonomous preservation of reliable access to international consumer markets and the supply of natural resources is a vital priority for Japanese national security. Flowery rhetoric aside, Japan does not truly share the abstract principles associated with the so-called Western model of liberal world order or the cosmopolitan worldview held by the so-called open societies. Instead, the fact that Tokyo has been clever and pragmatic enough to instrumentally harvest the concrete benefits provided by Pax Americana, such as the US nuclear umbrella and the availability of open waterways in the Indo-Pacific projects, that illusion. Actually, certain factions within the Japanese political class are staunchly convinced that reviewing the Japanese imperial tradition is the wisest course of action so that this country can play an assertive role within the international system. The late Shinzo Abe was a political representative of this view. The hawkish ideology that encouraged Japan to walk the path of war in the 20th century never vanished. Hardline Japanese nationalism simply remained dormant, waiting to be reawakened. The current circumstances are offering a window of opportunity for the pursuit of such agenda. A telling indicator that likely points in the same direction is the reactivation of Japanese military, the proliferation of military cooperation with strategic partners, and the rise of defense expenditures. Japan could afford to adopt a comfortable policy of benign neglect during the Cold War and focus on business instead. However, the circumstance that favored the preservation of the status quo in the Indo-Pacific, underpinned by the strong presence of the Americans in said area, are withering away. Regional stability and the redefinition of the global balance of power are now at stake. In addition, the implementation of ambitious revisionist project is already underway in several corners of the world. Therefore, the Japanese can no longer rely on interior in an increasingly uncertain, dangerous, hostile, and confrontational international system in which several expressions of conflict are proliferating in multiple domains. These Darwinian conditions, the push of irrational geopolitical forces, the legendary staff of the Japanese national character, and the imperative to determine its own fate are re-evoking a great power that had been watching the behavior of global affairs from the sidelines. Now that history is unfrozen, the return of Japan to the arena of high politics as a major and self-confident stakeholder is a matter of time, but how its performance on such a ruthless chessboard will ultimately unfold is still unknown. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, please like and subscribe to the channel.